For over 40 years, the Sundance Film Festival has been held on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Gojute, and Ute tribal nations. We do land acknowledgements to recognize the traditional stewards of this land and our 500 years of resistance to ongoing colonialism. But can we acknowledge the land without listening to the land? Take a moment to really listen. From the Ute to the Wet'suwet'en, from the Anishinaabe to the Kingdom of Hawaii, indigenous nations all over the world understand that the land does not belong to us. We belong to the land, and we continue to fight for her. Let this land acknowledgement move you beyond symbolic recognition. Let it be your call to action. Support indigenous resistance. Join us in the fight to protect our mother, for our human and non-human kin, for the next 7 generations.
Hello, good morning, aloha kako, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Sundance Film Festival Daily Artists and Meetups. My name is Amber Espinosa-Jones, and I am the manager of the Outreach and Inclusion Program here at Sundance, and I'm joining you all from Tongva Gabrielino territory in Los Angeles. By now, you've likely seen the community agreements, which we will link again in the chat to revisit. We thank you for doing your part in creating a safe community online at the festival this year. I also want to introduce Anella along with Jordan, who will be our ASL interpreters for the session. If you need an interpreter for the breakout rooms following the session, please message us in the chat. Closed caption is also available. This will be about a 45-minute conversation followed by 15-minute breakout groups where you can really engage with each other as artists and the panelists as well. I want to make sure everybody aware also that this conversation is being recorded, but the breakout groups following the panel will not be. And now it is my great honor to pass on the program to Cheryl Harasa, Interim Executive Director of Pacific Islanders in Communications. I've known Cheryl for a few years now, ever since she supported my own film set in Hawaii, and she has just been such a great champion of Pacific Islander stories through her organization, and I am so excited to have you here, moderating the Artist Talk Cinema from Kahiki to Kaimukī.
Thanks, Amber. Excuse me, aloha everyone. As Amber said, I'm Cheryl Hirasa, Interim Executive Director at Pacific Islanders in Communications, or PIC for short. Mahalo for joining us this morning for a conversation with some of the most talented and lovely human slash filmmakers I know. I know we'd all love to be gathering in person in Park City, but with the ever-changing conditions with COVID, I, for one, very much appreciate Sundance's attention to everybody's health and well-being. With that, a big mahalo to Sundance for making space for us to gather virtually in their daily artist meetup space, particularly Amber Espinosa-Jones and Kareem Ahmed from the Outreach and Inclusion Program, who I've known Kareem for years, and as Amber said, I've known her for a few years now, and this is the first time that we're collaborating together on something like this. So thank you so much for doing that. So to get things started, I'd love to introduce you to our panelists, whom I have the great honor in moderating a discussion with. First, there's Alika Tengen, who's a director and writer known for his powerful portrayals of life in Hawaii. Alika is based in Honolulu, Hawaii, and has multiple award-winning short films under his belt. just recently in 2021, Alika was awarded the inaugural Array and Google Feature Film Grant to create a feature version of Molokai Bound. And even more recent, Alika's first feature film, Every Day in Kaimukī, is having its world premiere here at Sundance later today. Actually with that, I'd like to cue a clip, Kieran, that we have for Every Day in Kaimukī.
Yama's my favorite Hawaiian food place. I eat here too much, if I'm being honest. I'm on a first name basis with these people.
Are you more Laulau or more Kula Pig?
Kula Pig. I think like a very like white Pacific Islander. Just because everything I order is like the least challenging food. I've never gone in there and been like, can I get opihi?
Thanks for that. So also joining us is Vea Mafileo, an award-winning director, producer, and production designer based in Aotearoa. Vea's works spans television and film throughout the Pacific, from her feature documentary For My Father's Kingdom, which had its US television debut on PIC's Pacific Heartbeat, and to the New Zealand on-air funded drama The Panthers, and just recently completed a 4-month director's attachment for the Lord of the Rings series. Vea's passion for Pacifica arts, storytelling, and nurturing Tongan filmmaking is evidenced in her founding of the Nuku Alofa Film Festival and Okalani Film Festival. And before we go any further, can we play Vea's clip, please?
Tongan way of thinking, everything revolves around your family. It's about sacrifice.
I think it's all around food.
I always thinking about the Tongan way. Instead of trying to compromise.
He was over here when I was growing up.
We used to get one phone call a year on our birthdays. I don't know if he realises how much the one phone call means.
Fedemo mamata, fedemo sioi, I heivi, fedemo malo hioi ofa moni.
You deserve a leader, a visionary, a navigator led by the stars.
Will you stop it? I don't need a visionary.
Where you going?
What about us, Tess?
Do you get girls? Heaves, eh? I can tell.
We islanders deserve to be seen and heard too.
We're in a war. Our soldiers die on war.
Yes, I am.
What do we, the Polynesian Panthers, stand for?
I'm walking to life.
We stand for motherfucking change.
I'm walking to the light, walking to the light.
Thanks. And our third panelist joining us is Dana Laduz Miller, a University of Hawaii at Manoa Academy of Creative Media graduate, and this year's Pacific Islander and Communications Trailblazer Award honoree. Dana is a writer and producer on many notable series, from AMC's Kevin Can F Himself to Lodge 49 to Narcos, Netflix's Narcos, and HBO's The Newsroom, to name a few. Currently, Dana is co-show running Netflix's Untitled Thai Cave Rescue limited series produced by SKG and John M. Chu. So thank you everyone for joining us. I just gave quick overviews of your backgrounds, but I know that doesn't even scratch the surface with your careers. So I wonder if each of you could share a little more about who you are, maybe starting with Alika. You know, you've had a really interesting journey as a filmmaker. One that if you step back, I feel like you can see there are, you know, definite like points along the way where there have been like really crucial stepping stones that led you to this moment. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, aloha mai, my name is Alika Tengan. He, him, his. I'm wearing like a sort of egg colored, I guess that's how you would say. It's an egg yolk sweater with my dad's firefighter hat that he bought me, and I am calling in from Kanaka Maoli territory, from the Kingdom of Hawaii, and yeah, happy to be here with you all. I'm still gathering my bearings after Vea's clip. It was too good, and I'm too hyped, and I can't even. I'm forming my thoughts. Okay. Yeah. Just a brief overview, I guess. Went to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Lived here, born and raised in Kaneohe. Lived here my whole life. Went to the film program at UH. Took some time off after graduating. Came back. Made 2 short films with my good friend Jonah Okano, who I went to ACM with. Also, Dana went to ACM as well. So we're repping strongly on here. And really, things kind of came together on a trip to Maori land with one of my prior short films, Mauka to Makai, which I shot with Chapin Hall. Chapin and I were invited to Maori land in 2018, and we really sort of bonded. We didn't know each other too well before that trip, but we really bonded pretty deeply and quickly on that trip, especially because he and I, being from Hawaii, were so incredibly inspired by the Maori cinema and sort of just indigenous cinema that we were ingesting as a whole during that festival. And you know, Vea is a part of that, and she's a part of that journey, because like we had this, after the festival, Chapin and I had this 2-day road trip back up to Auckland from Otaki, and we just sort of debriefed about everything about the festival and what we wanted for ourselves. And sort of Molokai Bound is actually a product of that conversation. And the last people that we had dinner with was Bea and Jeremiah in Auckland. So it all comes just beautifully full circle. The fact that you know, Cheryl assembled this panel, not really knowing, you know, my relationships to, you know, Vea and Dana are really, it all feels really serendipitous and beautiful. So yeah, that's the short of it.
Thanks. And Vea, maybe jumping to you, can you, Alika brought up, just filmmaking in Aotearoa, a lot of really great, shorts and features and, series. come out of Aotearoa, and I think that in large part, it's because, you've got this really great infrastructure that supports filmmaking there. So I wonder if you could, like, from your perspective, maybe, describe like your filmmaking journey as it was supported by, great institutions like NZ Film Commission and NZ On Air, but then also like, the amazing filmmaking community that you have there too.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Lovely and amazing to be here. Today I am zooming in from Rotorua, and the tangata whenua people of the land are the Te Arawa people. I am Tongan, Māori, Scottish and English. Born and brought up in New Zealand, but also lived for periods of time in Tonga. And I just want to say I'm so incredibly proud of Alika. And, it has been really wonderful to see his journey and quite a rapid journey, because it almost feels like yesterday that we were having that dinner, we were having these conversations, and, every time that we would catch up at festivals, there'd be like I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it. And he'd do it. And I'd be like, yes, you go, boy. So yeah, I think that's really the basis of how it kind of works here in New Zealand in our industry, because it's so hard to kind of get things off the ground. You just have to really have an idea and push it through and really invest your heart and soul into it, and people will catch on to that kind of excitement. And but also, because it takes so much out of you to get things done, and so it's all about kind of building these relationships. And we are fortunate here in New Zealand that we do have a really strong Māori cinema history. With our Moana Pacifica, it's relatively new and sporadic, but there are core people who have kind of been in the industry for a while, who provide really good mentors and, be the ones to kind of be like, you can do it, keep on championing you on, because it is such a journey, as you all know. Yeah, I think I first started, I wanted to be an artist. So I went to art school. I wanted to be a painter. And I'm really bad at writing, and we had a contextual studies component. And so I pulled out my camcorder, and every time I would go to do research in Tonga and wherever have you, instead of writing it all down, I would record it. And really from that, that became, I didn't feel like I could make any artwork that could represent anything better than what it actually was, to see people on film, to read their emotions, to really communicate my artwork in that way. So that became kind of my number one tool as an artist. And I moved into like moving in an image installation. And so that's kind of my sort of semi-side hustle. I do a lot of moving image installation work, but in the industry, started in the art department, the bum girl, and just kind of, it was just like a rolling ball into directing, then producing, and then eventually filmmaking. And so, yeah, here I am, but so excited to be here. And thank you, Cheryl and Alika. You're the man.
And so Dana, you have a somewhat different kind of journey to filmmaking. And so I was, I'd love to hear about, we had a little bit of a conversation around this when you were here at HIF, and we did like this live talk story. And, it just sounds like, it sounds amazing, but I feel like it also touched on some of the things that Alika and Vea brought up in terms of like, you know, just community-based, but also like mentorship that was part of your journey too. So I wonder if you could speak to that as well.
Sure. My name is Dana Ledoux Miller. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, Tongva Gabriela. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna start over. All right, I'm coming to you from Tongva Gabrielina land. I am at brown hair, light glasses, and what I'm realizing looks like Seinfeld's puffy shirt, but in denim. And yeah, I'm just so thankful to be here. Like Vea, nice to meet you, Vea. I've known Alika for a long time, and I'm just so proud of the work that he's done and that he's my friend. And yeah, my path is definitely different. I went to ACM at the University of Hawaii, studied film, and that was the first place that I'd ever been where I walked into a room and I said, I'm someone, and someone didn't say, can I see a photograph of your family to prove like where you come from? Because I'm so light skinned, I look so palangi, like I get it. But it was the first place I felt really accepted. And that was Murata Mita, actually, who was my advisor at the time. She took me aside, and I'll never forget the first time I was in her office and she handed me a script of Two Cars, One Night. And that was the first thing I had ever read by a Pacific Islander that felt, well, it's the first thing I'd ever read by a Pacific Islander. I didn't even know we could do that. And so from there, I really started to take steps to kind of explore who I was and what that meant as a filmmaker. So I made my first short at ACM called Matalasi, which was a really personal short film. It played at HIF, but I was also able to take it to American Samoa for the Pacific Arts Festival that year. And we had a really small film program, and I played it in Samoa, and it was this very illuminating experience, really, especially because the featured film at that festival was about Pacific Islanders, but it was written and directed by not a Pacific Islander. And I was like, wait, we should be able to tell our own stories. And that was my very first opportunity. And so I thought I was going to be, you know, an indie filmmaker. That was my dream. I wanted to keep pushing and finding ways to explore my own identity. This is the medium I've chosen to try to figure out who I am. And that's really what I work on in my writing. But I became a set PA, and then I was given a job on the newsroom and the writer's room, and my whole life changed. So I've been working as a writer and producer in television for the last 10 years. And it's definitely changed the types of stories I thought I would be telling. But I think it's really pushed me to dig deeper about who I am and the things that I want to say, because I've had to find ways within kind of the machine that is Hollywood to explore those things. And it's been interesting, but I'm only now in a place where I feel like I have enough, power is not the right word. It is much less than power is, to kind of help other people and myself like elevate the stories that we want to tell on a much larger scale. Like Alika and I worked together on the Quibi show that never was, for Quibi that never was. And we had a writer's room that was all Pacific Islanders. It was the first time I'd ever had an experience like that. We were in Hawaii, and it was just a room full of Pacific Islanders telling the stories that we wanted to tell, which were super universal, but had specificity that, you know, was very specific to us. And this, it was great. And I want more of that in my life.
That is a perfect jumping off point for where, you know, when I was talking to Amber and Kareem about this conversation, you know, I like the meat of this conversation was what you were just talking about, Dana. And so it's a great place to start, you know, a conversation around like, what do you, like the three of you, from, you know, the experiences that you have, your heritage and how you feel about that being represented in media. How do you see a world where there's this sustainable ecosystem, but not just sustainable, but a thriving as well, ecosystem of independent filmmakers being able to tell stories from their own communities, and not just documentaries, but narratives and television shows, and just spanning all of media. So I don't know, feel free to jump in.
Okay, I'm gonna go first, and I'm realizing again, I'm just gonna have to get my bearings after everyone's answer, because it's also just beautiful. And also, I know this is Dana and Vea's first time meeting, but I think we're all sort of in the same emotional wavelength. So there might be a lot of unexpected tears on this panel, I guess. Well, and so even, I mean, I didn't know that, Dana. I forgot that Marata was your advisor, and she was actually my first film professor at ACM, and I think she also showed us Two Cars one night, and I mean, it's pretty incredible, her connection to us, and it's especially coming from Aotearoa, and just what she meant to them and us. It's really mind-blowing. And even beyond that, my other Indigenous aesthetics professor at ACM, Lisette Flannery, in 2009 or 10, she brought Taika to talk to our class about his film Boy. At the time, this was a very it's the same Taika but a different Taika in 2010. But that was a really profound experience for me, because I loved that film, and to see this Polynesian person standing in front of me just talking about this story that's so hyper specific to where they're from, without feeling like it's about these larger things. But it on the surface it doesn't feel that way, but when you really start to dissect it, it has all these other beautiful layers and metaphors. And truly, I was I wanted to do that for Hawaii. I know that we have the stories here, I know that we have the talent here, I know it's such a we have just so many rich characters, and so far I've only really worked with non-professional actors, because when we're trying to tell these stories about these places, it's really hard to cast for these types of roles. And so I've just used my friends or people that I thought would be good avatars or be good messengers for what we're trying to do. And that's so much a part of all of my work so far, but especially the past couple of things with my roommate Holden Mondriel Santos, and then now on this one, who Holden's also in, but Naz Kawakami is the center of that. He's Hapa Hawaiian like myself, and just tapping into a lot of the natural characters and perspectives that we have here, because it's something that I really think we have a lot to say, and it feels like the right time to say it. And coming out of ACM, I just heard that the ACM is the most major at UH now, so I think there's just going to be a whole nother wave of upcoming Hawaiian and local filmmakers for years to come, and it's just a really exciting time for all of this. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm excited to be a part of this wave and this future wave. And it's going to be an exciting time for all of us.
Go ahead.
I was going to add, I've been thinking about this a lot, about how we can get our stories told on a much larger scale, but also, like you said, more sustainably. And I think I've been looking at the Asian American community a lot, especially here in Hollywood. CAPE is amazing and has supported so many people. But what they've also done is they've mentored not just artists and directors, but executives, people that they're putting in positions that can actually make the decisions, that spend the money to get TV shows made. I think there's a craving to see Indigenous people on TV. I mean, Reservation Dogs is one of the most successful television shows right now. But you know, Taika and Sterling worked really, really hard to get into those rooms. And I think making it, the way to make this world more accessible is to put ourselves in all the positions, because I think the artists, the directors, the filmmakers, we have the skills and we're only getting better and better all the time, but we have to open the doors for ourselves.
Van, I wonder, like, you know, is there something that you see from, you know, filmmaking in Aotearoa that could possibly be, you know, modeled or borrowed, you know, here in Hawaii, but also just generally speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we in New Zealand are very lucky because we do have these institutions like the New Zealand Film Commission and New Zealand On Air, where where at the moment there is a really big emphasis and push towards having more Indigenous content. And so they've put kind of rules in place where like 2 out of the top 3 producer, director or writer have to be of Indigenous descent for that particular story. And I think like, so having those measures around filmmaking, then that kind of in a way safeguards our stories and really to a certain extent, but gives us the opportunity to really tell it from our own lenses and in our own worldviews. But you know, there are the projects that slip through the cracks, you know. So it's also being aware and being not afraid to call things out that are getting funded that shouldn't actually be getting funded. You know, 2022 should not have these stereotypical characters written by Palangis, and you know, we don't need to feed society's cognitive biases. We don't need to continue that conversation, but there is still content that's being made. So I think as filmmakers and as people in the industry, we need to just keep on calling things out, because if we just let it happen, then it's just going to continue. So I think it's just like being very aware of what's happening in the industry, who's making what. Yeah, it is a tricky space to navigate. And so I think we are lucky because we, to a certain extent, have the numbers, but we are also still the minority. So it's still a fight and you know, a waving the flag and remember us, but also it's making sure that projects are not just being funded because it's going to tick that box. You know, X amount of Māori or Pacifica projects have to be funded, so that's going to go through. We still need to have a quality of work, and it can't just be like, okay, that's on the table, so that one goes through. You know what I mean? Like we always need to be keeping accountable of what's happening. And yeah, I think maybe that's what I got so far for it.
And you know, part of the reason why I ask this question is, you know, is for selfish reasons, not wholly altruistic, because from my perspective in what I do at PIC, part of this is, our work is to find ways to not just support the content, but the makers as well. And so there's, a lot of thinking that, myself, but also our, former executive director, Leanne Ferrer, who unexpectedly passed away last year. We've had multiple conversations about this push and pull between, needing to focus on projects, funding projects or doing funding based on project-based stuff, rather than, or trying to find space to carve out to be able to use our funding to support filmmakers, to support the talent. And actually, thank you, Dana, for bringing that up about Kate around it's not just the makers and the creatives, but it's also the executives, the gatekeepers, the folks that you would go to pitch your stories, and then would advocate for you in the system or in a studio environment and stuff. So I don't know if there was a question to that, but I just wanted to share, from PIC's perspective and the work that we're doing, this is all, really helpful. In terms of from a filmmaker's perspective, though, what advice would you give based on your own experience? How to, because I feel like, Alika, you've got incredible talent, and I think you're going to do amazing things, continue to do amazing things in filmmaking. Yet I feel like there's also this element of being in the right place at the right time as well. So I mean, in that sense, can you talk a little bit about what I was sort of kind of hinting at earlier is the stepping stones, because there's Ohina Labs, there's creative industries in Hawaii, there's there's all of these things here in place, and how you took advantage of that, or was there at the right time and the right place.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's really just kind of an amalgamation of so many factors, starting with ACM and having people that I trusted and that they believed in me, to feel that as an insecure artist at the time, trying to figure out my voice was really huge. And certainly, as you mentioned, there was some wonderful opportunities through Ohina. And again, having, Joe Robert Cole becoming sort of a mentor figure, and also him instilling his belief in me. It's having those sort of mentor figures are really huge. Yeah, it's just, it's not ever something we consciously set out to do in terms of what me and Chapin have been doing. It just kind of organically came out of, as I mentioned, this wave of inspiration we were feeling at the time, wanting to channel all of our influences into seeing, and again, being very fortunate to have that experience in Aotearoa, to get to know all of these incredible Maori and, Samoan and Tongan filmmakers, see the caliber that they're working at, want to translate it into something for us back home, starting very small scale with just the Moloka'i Bound short, which was literally just me and Chapin and my sister, and then building out from there. So it's not I don't think you can consciously be like, we're gonna do this thing and then that's gonna lead to the next thing and the next thing. Like you just have to do whatever you can do when you're in it and within whatever's within your means. And that's just kind of what, we've been doing ever since. So, you shouldn't, don't wait for other people to give you the opportunity. Like if you have the opportunity, you should take it. I think, me and Chapin have really believed in that and believed in the idea of momentum and like one thing leading to the next thing. And again, like if you stare, at the top of the Cocoa Head Trail, like, and you're at the bottom, you're like, how am I ever gonna do 1,000 stairs? I'm never gonna do that. You just have to like one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, you're doing it. So that's just been my ethos, and that's led us to where we are now. Everyone's journey is different. That's just kind of been mine, but just make films with your friends. I don't know, like you can do, literally anybody can do it. The barriers to entry, I mean, are higher in some ways, but they're also as low as they've ever been in terms of, cell phones and the access to technology. So yeah, just go for it.
I see that we have a question for Dana. Thank you, Netta. So question for Dana. What's that?
I was trying to type an answer, but I'll answer it out loud if you ask it.
Yeah, okay. What do you think it will take for these shows filming in Hawaii to start hiring more Native Hawaiians for their writing rooms, especially because the talent is here?
Great question. Also, I feel like I've been supposed to meet Netta for a very long time, so I'm very excited about this. And I think, I'm pretty sure all shows produced in Hawaii right now, and probably forever, are run by Palangi men. And so showrunners hire people that they know and feel comfortable with. I'm a showrunner now. I totally understand the impulse, because you're given millions and millions of dollars and you're told you have to produce something, or, you'll never work again. And so you hire people that you trust, and most people know people that look like them. And so the truth is, until we start having our own shows, it's going to be very hard to get Indigenous people into the rooms. It's starting because the talent is there. There are a lot of people that are starting to get their first jobs as staff writers, but that's a 10-year process to get up to a higher level in a room where you start doing the hiring. It's really challenging. But I think it goes back to also having not just executives, but agents, managers, the people that get your script into the hands of a showrunner. We need to be representing ourselves in those areas too. Like, honestly, let's just take over everything, and then we'll have all the opportunity. But I think we're getting closer. There's people like me out there that want to read your scripts and want to try to pass them to other people I know. I'm pretty sure NCIS Hawaii doesn't have any Native Hawaiian writers in it, and that's a problem. But like Vea said, pointing it out and be like, what the hell? Like, we have to change this, and we have to push harder. That's all I have. There's no easy answer.
And Vea, I think you were also kind of alluding to this as well too, earlier when you were talking about, like, there are some things in place that are supposed to kind of protect against non-Native, non-Indigenous folks telling Native and Indigenous stories. So, I know that, you've produced stuff, you've also, directed and done work in television and film. And so, like, I wonder, do you have this, would your advice be similar to Dana's, or, is it slightly different? And yeah, just wondering if you also know about, like, what it's like in other areas in the Pacific when it comes to, making films, or just media in general.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything that Dinah says. That you know, it's unless we really need to get more Moana Pacifica producers, because at the moment in New Zealand there's a really big shortfall, and so we are needing to call on Palangi producers, and that is sometimes not always good and safe for us, you know, because we're still learning safe environments to work on a film set. You know, the language of what it is to make Pacifica filmmaking, we're still actually creating that language. You know, other cultures have had like 100+ years of research and development and all these things that they've been able to make their cinematic language, whereas we're still relatively young in you know, figuring out what really impacts our people, you know, what hits home the best, and how to take care of our Pacifica on set. And you know, and it's little things like prayer before we eat, everyone eating together, you know, equality. There's such massive different, you know, the DOP is always like the king on set, but we need to kind of create a language and a working way that is our way. And until we get like Pacifica people in producing roles and executive roles and on the table of funding bodies, then they're not going to understand that this is the way that we need to work. Yeah, so that's just a little bit about that. But as a filmmaker, and I think my journey in this, whatever this space is, it's hard to describe, isn't it? Is it a blessing or is it a curse? I don't know. But it's very much been an organic process, and all about networking. And that's not even really been intentional, but I think, you know, it's the key here is communication, right? And so whenever you're in that space with other creatives and other people in the industry who have the power to make changes and what have you, then it's about going up to them and talking to them and just saying, hi, here I am. And sometimes that is really hard. I'm not really I'm actually, you know, I'm kind of a shy person, right, guys? No, so it's kind of like getting over that initial shyness as well, and like just saying, hey, here we are, we've got stories and we want to tell them our way, so give me the money. No. But yeah, I think also too, in New Zealand we are lucky because we have like PISA, which is Pacific Island Screen Artists. So all of you here, please join. Look up PISA, and it's a group of us who we have things like writing rooms. Generally, we try to have like panels and what have you. You know, little things that as a community we can build ourselves up and support ourselves. And you know, it's also about knowing what's happening in terms of work-wise, and you know, everything is about kind of word of mouth and the way how we communicate with each other in society in Pacifica ways, which is you know, about making sure that that bar and those relationships are good and maintaining them, so that you can kind of jump from one gig to the next gig and see through that work ethic that, you know, they're someone that you would want on your team. So I think it's, you know, that's very much been the journey as well, is like learning on the ground and just being present and on time, but trustworthy. You know, trust is the biggest thing on set, because if you don't trust someone, then no one has your back. And it's such a scary kind of environment to be in, that you need people who you can trust and be like, hey, help me at this point, because it's all such a collaboration from A to Z, you know. It's so that's the other thing, you know, is being a trustworthy person in this industry goes a long way, I feel, and authentic too, you know. You don't have to, you can be yourself in this industry. This is one of the things that's gold about this industry, is like the more kind of random and kooky you are, the more kind of get opportunities you get, because we want to see different things. We want to see change. We want to see people like us. So yeah, it's, I think, grabbing onto that momentum of that, because right now that's in, right? The different is very much in. So there is opportunities currently in the world at the moment that we just have to really grab onto and run with, which what Alika has done.
All really, really great stuff. Thank you so much for, you know, your insights from your perspectives and from your backgrounds. You know, just to kind of paraphrase, if I can, Alika, go out and do. Make movies with your friends. Just keep making, creating. Dana, infiltrate all levels. Take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. And Vea, I think what you just brought up in terms of, like, you know, filmmaking from a specifically Pacifica approach, you know, is leading by example, is modeling, is like, you know, this is how films are made here. And, you know, hopefully that will be, you know, the model going forward. I also did want to mention, maybe not quite exactly what you were talking about, but there is a resource, right? The Brown Book, I think it's called. Dr. Ella Henry helped publish a Brown Book in Aotearoa, and there's also the Hawaiian Handbook that is being written and will be published soon in Hawaii, about cultural protocols when it comes to filmmaking. So I think we're at time now on this portion of the panel. Let's see. I think we're going to break out into breakout rooms. But before that, I just wanted to give another shout out and thank you. Big mahalo to Alika, Vea. Vea, I think it's like 8. You jumped on at something like 7:30 in the morning. So thank you, especially for that. And Dana, thank you for joining us from LA.